Kia ora class. Today we're going to be talking about the acute responses of the human body to exercise. Our learning intention for today, we are identifying the body's acute responses to exercise and explaining how those responses affect performance. So what are acute responses? Acute responses are also called short-term responses. They are the changes that our body goes through during exercise to help us perform. They tend to be changes that go back to normal not long after exercise stops. That is, they're not sort of permanent changes. And the severity of these changes or responses is dependent on how long and how intense the activity is. So a really long and intense activity, you're going to see more pronounced and more severe responses than just a short little activity. So the body's systems. When we're talking about acute responses, we're going to look at three main systems within the body that show some change to exercise. The three systems that we're going to focus on are the muscular system, that is the skeletal muscles which do the work, the cardiovascular system, that is the heart, veins and arteries, everything involved in getting blood around the body. And lastly, the respiratory system, so that is our airways and our lungs. What acute responses will you see in the cardiovascular system? You'll see an increased heart rate, that is, your heart will beat more times per minute. You'll see that more blood is pumped with each beat. The heart actually pumps harder with each beat, meaning more blood is moved every time it pumps. You'll see an increase in blood pressure. That's a result of the heart beating more often and also beating harder. That raises our blood pressure. And you'll also see that blood is actually directed away from our organs to our working muscles and towards our skin, and that's done through vasodilation and vasoconstriction. The blood vessels leading to the organs get a little bit smaller, they shrink a little bit, still allowing some blood flow but not as much, and the blood vessels heading to the working muscles and the skin, they get bigger to allow more blood to flow through. So why do these occur? When the body exercises, it uses oxygen to help synthesize, create ATP in order to perform. More muscle movement means that you need more oxygen at the muscles and not at, say, the stomach or the intestines. You don't need as much blood there. The body also sends blood to the skin surface to allow it to cool down a bit. So that's why blood is diverted to the skin a bit more. It's because this is a really good place for it to cool down and to lower the overall body temperature. It's why you get sort of red in the face or red in the skin when you're exercising really hard. So how does this affect performance? How do these acute cardiovascular responses affect performance? Well, all these responses mean that more oxygen, O2, gets to the muscles, and that means that more ATP can be produced there and any waste products can be removed. Also, sending blood to the skin helps stop the body from overheating, as we just talked about. And in general, these acute responses of the cardiovascular system should mean that we can work harder for longer. So that's how they affect performance. Looking at the respiratory system now, what are the acute responses there? Well, you'll see an increased respiratory rate, that is, you will breathe in and out more times per minute, and you'll also see that the breaths you take are bigger and deeper, okay, and that's called tidal volume. Why do these occur? Well, again, it's to do with ATP and oxygen. When you're exercising, the body requires more oxygen to keep making ATP and to get rid of waste products. The lungs are how the body takes in oxygen, so they're going to have to work harder to get more oxygen in. And in the same way, they will work harder to get more waste product, that's CO2 and H2O, work hard to get those out. Inhale, exhale, in order to meet those demands. So how does these things affect performance? Well, by puffing, that is, you're breathing deeper and more frequently, we get in more oxygen to the body and therefore get more to the muscles and get more of those waste products exhaled out. Therefore, this should mean that we are able to work at our maximum intensity for our body systems, because there is more ATP being made for the muscles to do their work. So the acute muscular responses now. What changes will we see here? Well, you see an increase in muscle temperature. The muscles actually get warmer. You see that muscles become more flexible and generate more force as a result of doing some exercise. And you'll see muscle fatigue. This is when muscles run out of energy stores and too much waste builds up in the muscles. Why do these occur? Well, heat is created by muscles during exercise, therefore the temperature of the muscle increases. The ideal temperature for muscles is above resting temperature, so after some work, after some heat has been created, you'll find that muscles become a little bit more elastic and they contract better. That's why they are more flexible and stronger after they have exercised as a response to exercise. And lastly, to do with fatigue, if the body uses its stored energy faster than it can remake it, obviously it's eventually going to run out and you're going to have to stop working. At the same time, if the body can't remove waste products quick enough, if waste is building up, then that waste will hit a critical point where again the muscles have to stop working or slow down, and that is what muscle fatigue is. So how do these affect performance? Well, increasing the temperature is generally good for muscles, as we talked about, up to a certain point. If you overheat, then your performance will definitely be negatively affected. And the body has a couple of ways of trying to counter that. It sweats, okay, and it also, like we talked about, sends blood to the skin, where heat can be taken away, where heat can be lost to the environment. And lastly, muscle fatigue will also have a negative effect on performance. If you get to a point where your muscles are fatiguing, where they are either running out of stored energy, or where the waste products are building up to such a degree that it's affecting performance, and that's obviously going to be a negative thing, where you're going to have to slow down or even stop. So in summary, we have talked about the acute responses that the body experiences during exercise, the short-term responses, and we've looked at how those responses might affect performance.